Ohio political news. Here we go tonight. It's live as always. You can't do it. Without being live. How you doing there, Brian? We got a
Good evening,
we got a
Joe.
lot. Good to see you here tonight. We got a lot to cover. It's been a little bit of a while, so it's good to see you.
I'm glad you're feeling much better and joining us on the podcast. So that's
Yeah, feeling a lot better. As a matter of fact, yep, feeling a lot better. Oh,
Yeah, you didn't take
right.
any
Hey, today we got a lot
COVID
we're going to be
shots.
talking about. One thing is NOACA. We're really going to go and dive deep into NOACA, grab of taxation and manipulation by unelected bureaucrats. We're going to get into it because it's in full swing. It's in full swing, and we have to understand what it's all about. Another thing I just in mentioning right now is House Bill 73 that I want to touch on here real quick. House Bill 73, if you remember, this was to allow you to use ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine in case we have another COVID-19 type of outbreak, okay? This whisked through the Ohio House, went to the Ohio Senate where you thought it would just whisk through, and it didn't. It got stalled in committee, and primarily because of Matt Huffman. Now, this is something we've got to talk about because Matt Huffman is going to become the Speaker of the House. All right? That's a foregone conclusion. He will become Speaker of the House. So it's important as that we understand where Matt Huffman stands on things. Now, I have this from Ohio Advocates for Medical Freedom, Stephanie Stock's website. Really good stuff here. But it's really sad that it looks like Huffman is bowing to the big pharmaceutical companies, and watering down House Bill 73, just destroying it, watering it down to the point where it has no real value. Here she is. She's not on our show tonight, but she was on with Bob France there talking about it as well. This is important. This is important information because, like I said, you have Matt Huffman, who is going to be the Speaker
did he
of the
give
House.
a solid
primarily,
reason?
he's the one who watered down House Bill 73 because he is so close, an arm in arm with big pharmaceutical companies. This is horrendous, okay? This is absolutely, in my mind, absolutely horrendous. And this is what we have to bring to the forefront. We have to know where our state legislators in Ohio stand. We have to know the story behind the story. And especially if he's going to be the Speaker of the House. We had enough trouble with Jason Stevens. Finally, he's out of here, thank God. But now we have another problem with Huffman because of big pharma, all right? Now, here's how it works. These lobbyists, they wear the suit, the tie. They talk to the lawmakers all the time. They're the only ones that really talk to them, it seems like. And they'll give them money and help them with their campaigns, but they always need a favor. Nobody's going to give these guys money without a favor. And then the lawmakers have to do the bidding of a lot of these lobbyists. And that's what seems to be happening here with Huffman and House Bill 73, because it was completely watered down to the point where it had no real value to it at all. Just read this real quick. House Republicans sent a strong message to Senate leadership last night by voting no on Chairman Huffman's version of House Bill 73. His version was a devastating blow to the families of victims of Ohio and to the citizens, and to the 75 House representatives that all voted the provision for the original bill. And then, again, this is off of Ohio Advocates for Medical Freedom. Thank you, Representative Gross, for standing with the families and for non-concurrence. Representative Gross, Ohio Advocates for Medical Freedom. And others will start the next assembly to fight for real legislation to protect your right to outpatient and inpatient access to drug options and for true medical free speech for healthcare providers. Very good. Yeah, very good. So that's the problem. Now, when it was voted on and it went back to the House, to vote on this watered-down version by Matt Huffman and his clan. Okay, so it basically gutted House Bill 73. Well, 88 of the 99 state representatives voted no for the watered-down version. 3, and I don't know who those 3 were, voted yes, and the rest didn't vote. Think about that, 88 of 99. So you've got almost all the Republicans, almost all the Democrats in the State House saying, no way, Jose, this ain't going to cut it. And that we were shut down originally with COVID-19. That can never happen again. Suicides, there was so much psychological damage done to kids. The whole thing was horrible. Businesses just one after the other put out of business so that we did the bidding of big pharma. And the jabs, if you remember, you had to get the jab. You had to get it from Moderna. You had to get it from Johnson & Johnson, and you had to get it from Pfizer. That was it. No, nothing else. Nothing else was permitted. Ivermectin was working. No, you can't do that. Hydroxychloroquine, working. No, you can't use any of that. You only can use what the big pharmaceutical companies tell you can use so that they can make major, huge profits. That, to me, is what COVID-19 was all about. What do you think, Brian?
So does Huffman, does he ever talk to the public and say, this is why I gutted the bill and watered it down?
That's a good question. I don't know how much he has, I don't know how much he's been talking to the public about it. It doesn't sound like it. But it's no secret, okay? There is no secret here that he's an arm in arm with Big Pharma. And this is, to me, this is what, Stephanie Stock for Americans for Advocates for Freedom, Medical Freedom and stuff, and others have been saying, hey, we got to put the microscope on everybody these days, okay? So it's not like the old days where you could just hide. The state lawmakers, we got to expose it. And the importance of Matt Huffman, we cannot overstate that. The guy's going to be the Speaker of the House. And he could be the Speaker of the House for what, 8? At least 8 years, I think? That's a long time. So
can we find out his donors just by going to his election report?
I think we need to. I think we need to do a real dive into that. That's a great point. We need to look at where he's getting the money, where he's getting the funding, and just how much of it is coming from pharmaceutical companies and stuff. That is exactly, Brian, that is exactly the kind of stuff that needs to be done. That is, we've got to shine the light on what's happening. We've got to shine the light. So that's that. Hey, there was another bill I want to talk about. Oh, by the way, we are going to be talking about NOACA coming up roughly around 7:30, so in about 14 minutes or so. Roughly, we got Jim Callis, who's going to be John Callis, who's going to be speaking with us, and he's been attending a lot of meetings. He's been looking at this for several years. We got to dive deep into NOACA and what is up with that. Okay, what is up with NOACA? I don't pretend to be an expert, but we got to dig into that. Hey, there was another bill Governor DeWine signed. It's called the bathroom bill. Have you heard of that one? Yeah. So anyhow, the bathroom bill, Brian, it tells you, now we had to have a law so that if you're a boy, you got to use the boys' restroom, and if you're a woman, you use the female restroom.
We've got to have a law for that.
Got to have a law.
It just shows you the morality of our society.
And the law passed. DeWine signed it into law. It went to his desk, and he actually signed it. That's good. So it takes effect in February, So I guess you could still use whatever restroom you want to until then. It's for all of K through 12 public and charter schools.
K through 12.
And colleges, too, by the way. Colleges.
Yeah, we've got different in Lake County with our 9 school districts. I do know that Riverside is much more conventional and conservative in their thought process, but the Mentor School District is not. They're definitely, as I say, darkness has enveloped that school district, and they have the issue of boys wanting to.
Now, which school again is that? Which school?
Mentor School District.
Okay, Mentor. Wow.
Yeah, it's a big school district.
That's a big school district. Yeah.
It's a challenge there. So I would think now that the governor signed it, it should be automatic, or will they ACLU or one of those organizations, will they file an appeal?
Well, I mean, they could, but it's going to become law, so they would have to file an appeal, I would think, to undo the law. It's going to take effect in February. It's just so bizarre.
They could probably file an appeal before February, though, I would think, and put it on hold until the Supreme Court rules on it. They couldn't drag it on for quite some time.
Unbelievable. But it's not just the bathroom. It's called the bathroom bill, but it's also lockers. You don't want the guys going into the women's locker rooms, things like that. I mean, what an invasion of privacy that is. Come on. It's really dumb.
Back in the day, that would never even been thought about. If a boy went into the girls' locker room, boy, they'd be hauling him out and kicking him out of school.
Yeah. Well, we are living in a strange, strange world these days.
You can say that again.
And all we can do is try to make it less strange, if at all humanly possible. And speaking of which, we did a really good job with this last election. I want to recap that for a minute. So Trump won, of course, at the top of the ticket. 11 percentage points he took in Ohio. He won by 11 points in Ohio. So kudos.
Yeah, didn't he win the last time by 8%? I think,
right. He won last time by 8, this time by 11, which is good. We also won Bernie Moreno, who knocked off Sherrod Brown.
That's a big win.
That is a huge one. Thank God that happened. Thank God. So that was massively huge. Plus, what goes unnoticed is all 3 Republican Ohio Supreme Court justices won. All 3 of the Republican Ohio Supreme Court justices won. And they won. Almost all of them got exactly the same amount of votes, which is pretty interesting. So it was just click, 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 click right down the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
You start at the top, you vote Republican for Trump, then his coattails, Bernie Moreno, click. Then the 3 Supreme Court justices, we'll continue with the Republican, boom, boom, boom. And
that I have to say, Joe, that bothers me a little bit, though, when I really don't know. I like to be informed before I go, to the polling booth, and I want to make sure that I understand who I'm voting for, but with the judges, be they at the Supreme Court or at the local level, the appellate courts, unfortunately, the citizens don't know who they're voting for because they never can really ask the judges, what's your position on something? Where do you get your morality from? That sort of thing. And I find that rather distressing for me anyway, because I want to make sure that I'm an informed voter before I go into the polling booth.
Well, you're an exception to the rule. Don't forget, Brian. You're an exception to the rule. You want to be an informed voter. Most people don't want to be an informed voter. But how difficult is it to try to gauge an Ohio Supreme Court justice? How can you? It's just.
Well, we've got to come up with questions, some valid questions that, how do we vet these candidates? Just because they've got a Republican or an R after their name, that shouldn't be an automatic, I'm voting for him or Democrat. I mean, you really should know, especially the judges, how do they feel on certain issues. But what I have found is we had Eklund is a judge, and we had him at a Republican meeting and asking him questions. He said, "Well, I really can't answer that because it may come before the as a judge, and I would have to abstain because I've given my ruling." So I think voting for a judge is a very difficult task. It is for me anyway.
Incredibly difficult task to vote for.
You're right, Brian.
Yeah, look who joined us.
Hey,
How you doing there,
Leonard.
Leonard?
Oh, I've been here for a while. I was just enjoying things. That's all. Like to listen
good.
to the experts.
Good to see you out there.
Yeah, Leonard, you're with me on the judges, right? I mean, or any candidate.
Well,
We've talked about how do we vet these candidates better.
Well. Technically, Brian, what's interesting is if we really had a constitution, right, you really wouldn't even be voting for a judge. They would be appointed. And the reason why is because we vote for legislators and the what we call the head official of the state. That's really the only two we should be voting for. Now, the reason why we have it this way is because now you can't hold really anybody accountable for anything. And we're supposed to be depending on our representative to hold them accountable. But now all they have to do is just say, well, you guys voted for them. And you guys, and then the whole thing is just out of whack. So, but you're right. We shouldn't even have to vote for judges. They should be appointed. And that way, if they go off the rail, we can go to our representatives and we can deal with it.
Well, again, another issue with that, Leonard, what I've seen in Lake County, though, that would be like, appointing somebody to a board, let's say the Lakeland Community College Board, and if they're not doing their job and just being a rubber stamp for the board president, what good is it? So there's no one there's no checks and balances in our system. And it's more just driven by political party. And I'd like to see it a little more in depth rather than just political party.
Yeah, I just think it's incredibly difficult though when it comes to justices and especially Supreme Court justices. What are they going to really tell you? They're going to say, "Well, I can't really officially give you a ruling on this case or that case or something."
Well, how about Joe? How about if we ask them? Do you believe in the Bible?
Sure.
Where are you? Where's your morality? Do you believe in the Ten Commandments?
Sure.
I mean, that's sort of a basic question. You would think a judge would say yes. I'm not asking is he a Catholic or a Protestant or Jewish? I'm just saying, where is your morality? What's your basis, for morality?
Or ask him if he would take a bribe under the table. Ask him that.
Yeah.
And see what he says.
Yeah.
Well, that may be a little extreme.
But no, the good thing is, I know you're supposed to vet the judges and all that kind of thing. But the good thing is, all three Republicans won. And these three Republicans, two of them I actually talked to on one occasion. And they are solid, conservative, excellent judges. And they're fairly young, so they should be there for a long time. So I think we're in good shape. Now, it was getting a little hairy there for a while because at one time it was I think it was like 6-1 like it is now, Republicans, Democrats. Then it became 5-2 Republican, Democrats. Then it went to 4-3, okay, Republican, Democrats. And that's where we were. We were at 4-3. And so it's getting a little tight because once the Democrats take control of the Supreme Court, God only knows what's going to get passed. So then now we got all three. We got all three victories with the Republican Party, and so now it's back to 6-1.
Hey, Jonathan.
Welcome.
Hey, guys. Yeah, I was just saying, look at Michigan. I mean, Michigan is they're caught up in far left. The left control everything in the state of Michigan. So we refer to things like when we were looking at the gerrymandering issue last year, and we were referencing what was happening in Detroit. They were ahead of us on that issue. And thankfully, hopefully people paid attention to the illustration, the examples we were giving why to vote against issue 1 this year. We succeeded. But as we keep looking at Michigan as the example of what not to do, Michigan they're captured. I mean, I hate to say it because I love the state. It's a beautiful state. There's so much going on. There's so much great potential in the state of Michigan. But for the moment, for the foreseeable future, their House, both sides, the House and Senate, the governor's mansion, everything's Democrat. And it's far left, ultra liberal Democrat, progressive. It's a shame.
That is right. You're right, Jonathan.
Yeah, we've got a guest coming up at 7:30. We're going to be talking NOACA. I want to bring this up to you guys real quick. Are you aware that Jimmy DeMora is out now? He's out of prison. You guys remember Jimmy DeMora? You got to go back to 2012, and I can't believe it. It seems like just yesterday.
Somebody said he was out, but he had to wear an ankle bracelet or something like that. I don't know the details, but someone was telling me that.
Yeah, he's under like house arrest or something like that. But he's basically got his. It seems like he's basically got his freedom.
For years, Jimmy DeMora was a larger-than-life figure in Cuyahoga County politics. In 2008, everything came crashing down.
I'm not an angel, but I'm no crook.
What do you hear that? That's what I love about this guy. He's got a big, huge mouth. He's got a big, huge belly, too. The guy weighed 400 pounds. And it's like, I ain't no crook. But I ain't no angel either. Look at what the FBI is hauling out. All those records that they took.
FBI raided his home in Independence. Prosecutors said he steered county contracts in exchange for cash, home improvements, and other gifts and favors. Asked him about it in 2010.
And this is when he was caught with a prostitute or something like that.
What did she do? Exactly what I asked for, the massage, and that's on phone tape. I didn't ask for a hooker on the phone. I didn't ask for a prostitute on the phone. I asked for a massage.
Despite his denials and defiance, he was found guilty
this guy
of
was
32
some character.
corruption
Is
charges
a character.
in 2012,
He is a character.
including bribery, conspiracy, and racketeering. He was sentenced to 28 years behind bars. In June 2022, it was reduced to 23 years because 2 counts related to work on his outdoor kitchen were vacated. Then, in June of 2023, DeMora was released into home confinement after former county treasurer Jim Rokakis spearheaded a campaign to get him out.
Okay, so what they did was Rokakis talked to Joe Biden and said, hey, you've pardoned 8,000 people so far. Why don't you think about pardoning DeMora?
After the 69-year-old suffered 2 bouts of COVID.
He was close to dying. They ran out of ventilators.
Rokakis here. Yeah, he was close to dying because he got COVID-19. Give me a break.
They kept him alive once on a CPAP machine. I think that's a lot of suffering.
For years, Jimmy DeMora was a large
CPAP machine. a lot of people use the CPAP machine. I wouldn't consider that as suffering, and
it's designed to cut back on aid your snoring. Joe, can I make a comment on this? I'm just going to interject.
Let me ask you guys something real quick, though. Do you remember Jimmy DeMora at all? Do you remember any of that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I've got him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I know the electricians that worked on his house.
Well, here's a perspective that sort of made its way into my understanding of the world. And take this with a grain of salt. This is not a specific indictment of any individual. But I get the sense that once you enter the political world, with rare exception, there is just constant mayhem and fraud and shenanigans that happen all over the place. And I think that kind of like the old KGB in Soviet Union, I think pretty much all of it is documented. And anybody that plays along and goes along gets a free pass on whatever you want. But as soon as you anger the powers that be, they throw you under the rug. And that's Republican, Democrat, and otherwise. So when we see these things, whatever it was with Jimmy DeMora, and I'm not going to comment on his guilt or innocence, and I think he made the comment, I think relative to other politicians, he's probably just comparable to pretty much everybody and does the same things. But he angered somebody. This is a sense that I get. And it's kind of not just Jimmy DeMora and in that instance. It is a lot of different politicians. And we saw it recently with the mayor in New York who went against the whole Biden campaign and commented from the Democrat side on border patrol, on the border security, and the invasion of these illegals in New York. And then next thing you know, lo and behold, he got slammed. And who's the other? Was it New York or New Jersey? The guy with gold bars in his house. I think that pretty much all of these people, once you get into politics, you get snowballed up in all this stuff. You can have these free things, and you can go on these trips, and you can get these things and stuff. And I think that it's not until you anger somebody on high that you actually get ratted out and go to jail for it.
Yeah, you are right to an extent on that, because everybody knew that DeMora was doing this stuff. It was no secret. Him, and if you remember Russo he got like 20 years. I think he died in prison. There were those 3 county commissioners. Russo, who was the third one? I don't even remember his name. I don't think he did any jail time. But the problem I saw was that no one was going to do anything against DeMora. If the FBI hadn't stepped in, he'd still be king of the hill, even to today. So, thank God the FBI stepped in. Maybe he did anger someone, like you said, and the FBI said, well, we better do something already. But, boy, if FBI doesn't step in, no one steps in. Governors don't step in, state reps, nothing. Zero, zilch, okay? It would have been, he had free reign.
And that would be including the local prosecutor. They're not going to say anything against, one of their own.
Right.
Yep.
So that's where we got to start shining some light on everything here. John, are you out there? How you doing, man? Can you hear me? You froze up.
I think he's frozen.
John, you
he's either concentrating on us or he's frozen.
I think he's frozen.
He's frozen.
Or turn the heat up a little bit in your house, okay? Turn the heat up. Come on. That's what happened to me when I this morning. Because I just had the heat off, and the house was like icicles were growing.
Joe, I'm going to send a text message to John Kalis to
just to reconnect.
Drop out and come back.
Oh, there he is. How you doing, John?
Oh, he's back.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? How's it going?
It's going well. How about you? Hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear him.
Did I spell your name correct? He's got the NOACA hat on. Did I spell your name correct? That's the most important thing.
Got it.
All right. How are you tonight? So we're going to talk a lot about NOACA and stuff like that here tonight. I don't pretend to be an expert on NOACA, but I want to get to the meat and bones of what NOACA is doing. And you were at one of their recent meetings in Medina, so that should be very interesting. But what I want to do is I want to take the conversation and let's talk to it as it is, like not as NOACA wants us to believe it is or whatever. What is it that what they're actually up to? But anyhow, why don't you give me a little background? You're in Medina. Is there anything else we need to know about you? I like the hat too. I like the hat.
Trophy. It's my trophy from their annual summit back in October. I was lucky enough to attend. So I ended up with some parting gifts.
Oh yeah.
But you asked who I am. I'm just your average citizen, right?
Okay.
I'm just a guy. I'm a guy that used to live in the city of Cleveland, and I used to travel throughout the city of Cleveland, and I spent a lot of my time on the road, going back probably 7-8 years ago, started seeing these bike lanes pop up. And it was kind of curious because, they weren't there one day, they were there the next. And I didn't remember voting for any of it. I didn't remember anyone campaigning on it. Right? It was never in the public lexicon. The most that I had seen was the city struck a deal with one of the bicycle advocacy groups to put bike lanes in, and the city wasn't moving fast enough, so they put their own in. They went and got some spray paint and created their own bike lanes. The media celebrated that, and I found it kind of funny because I wondered what would happen if I would have taken it upon myself to make measures like that. I don't think that it would have been received so well.
So, John, let's talk NOACA here. So, give me an overview so we can really dive into it, and you know it a lot better than I do. So, what is the ultimate game plan with NOACA, in your opinion?
In the ultimate game plan, like I said, the bicycles, stuff that's pretty innocuous, right? NOACA is our metropolitan planning organization. They were created with a grant from HUD back in the 60s. They're tasked, mandated, to handle our infrastructure. So
well,
that's
when you say task mandated, so they're federally funded, right? They're getting money from the federal government.
Yep.
And
go ahead.
What I know they're big on climate change. They're big on bikes, electric vehicles, no carbon emissions. If you look at their website here, it's just they want everything to be absolutely perfect. But there's a real problem here with NOACA. I mean,
Sure.
There's something that we diabolical almost about it. Would you say what is that?
Well, without it doesn't make sense. Right? It sounds too drastic. It sounds too dramatic without just a little backstory, right? You had up their climate action stuff. That's where they're at today. Where they were at in 2017, 2018. There's plenty of videos if anybody wants to look for it. They were advocating for equity in transportation, equity in housing. So a lot of stuff, in our day-to-day lives, wanting to push equity to the forefront of it. They weren't receiving a lot of support from the State House, and they would complain about that in a lot of their early videos. They wanted to impact people. They wanted to flex muscle where they had power. If that meant talking to the traffic engineer in the city of Cleveland to manipulate traffic signals to make it harder to drive down Euclid Avenue, that's one of the ways that they proposed making change. Okay, so their gripe was with the state. They couldn't get any funding through the state. That all changed after COVID. So everything that we're looking at, whether it's NOACA oriented or housing stuff now, everything that we're looking at is a byproduct of the lockdown. I don't ever want anyone to lose sight of that, because we need to look at it from the epicenter so we can identify the fraud that's happening. Where we stand today with NOACA after the lockdowns, Joe Biden brought in the Inflation Reduction Act, and he brought in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So the IRA and the IIJA. And through those two acts, they allocated somewhere around $450 billion of climate action funding for metropolitan planning organizations. So it's a giant pool of money for everybody across the country.
Let me ask you, just jump in here for a quick question. I'll open it up to some of the other guys too. But you were at a meeting just recently in Medina about NOACA.
Mm.
What was that meeting about?
The most recent meeting that I attended, their public engagement sessions, it was an update for their long range plan. So, got a lot of urban planners in the region. They all come from Cleveland State for the most part, and they're scattered, like I say, throughout the region. So NOACA plans pretty far out in advance. When they talk to the cities and the municipalities they deal with, they say that they want a backlog of about 5 years worth of projects in the bank, ready to go as soon as they have the funding. So, 5 years out from today is going to be almost 2030. The way that they plan, they have a plan that's planning for 2050. So as we're looking, we can't plan for a week or 2 weeks ahead of us. Our planning organizations are planning 25 years out to 2050. What this thing touched on was our transit a lot. It touched on that. It touched on a little bit of economic development. It touched on housing. It touched on workforce development and workforce housing. So, I can go any of those which ways, but just to kind of get that, in people's heads. That's the kind of things that NOACA is talking about, far from their initial scope of their mandate, which is planning for infrastructure.
All right, hang on a second. Brian, you're big in NOACA. You have a lot of knowledge and stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm big into it, but I do know that the three commissioners from Lake County are involved in that. Also, the engineer, I believe, is also in there. And I know that John Morrow, who is the mayor of Timberlake, was recently appointed by Commissioner Plechnik to be his representative when Commissioner Plechnik can't make the meetings. And I've always been told that NOACA was, as our guest said, for infrastructure, roads, bridges, and that sort of thing. But when I talk to commissioners, it seems to be the commissioners are very happy when they can get funding, massive amounts of funding through NOACA for other projects other than roads and bridges. For example, here in Paynesville to replace the big power plant and make it have fields of the what do we call it? The
solar arrays,
solar panels.
That they use. Yeah, they're using all of the electricity. They're using now no longer the coal. They want to eliminate the coal power and replace it with the wind power and electric power through the sun and that sort of thing. And I agree that this thing is going to be a monster. What I personally think they want us to look like, Europe, and that is consolidating everyone in close proximity, and they're going to get rid of the cars. You can't drive unless you've got electric vehicles, and they want you to use public transportation and bikes and probably scooters and that sort of thing.
Yeah. What do you think, Jonathan? Any thoughts?
Well, I think start your timer. You're gonna shut me off before too long. I could go on for hours about this stuff. The first thing to know is that we said no to the Green New Deal, but this is the Green New Deal sneaking around back door, and it is inserting itself in American life, and it destroys the very fabric of America. Here's what I mean by that. We are designed to have representative government. And I've gone round and round with some people on both sides of the aisle on what representative government is truly meant to be and how it works. Here's the way that our system of government absolutely must work in order for us to function. And everybody knows it. Everybody should know it. And everybody needs to keep it at heart. We, the people, decide what happens in our life, our society, our environment, and everything around us. We drive the decisions. What this does is tugs at the heartstrings and tells people that the world is going to end if we don't kowtow to the greeny-meeny environmentalists who are coming in with these edicts and dictation, and they are trying to mandate virtually every aspect and element of our lives. They're doing it, and remember, harken back to that whole Green New Deal and AOC and the far left, the communists, whatever you want to call them. When they first tried to roll it out and America balked, we said no. What NOACA and organizations like them seek to do, and I'm going to give you live examples. Earlier in our discussion, I was referencing Michigan and how to look at Michigan as the example of what not to do. NOACA is coming in and attempting to dictate not just to Cuyahoga County, but to 5 counties in this region, Lake, Geauga, Medina, Lorain, and Cuyahoga counties, trying to dictate virtually every aspect of how we live our lives under this whole mantra of they're going to save the world and the environment and all that stuff if only we just simply cave and give them ultimate power with no direct representative government. And there is, I'm telling you, I've been to a bunch of these meetings. John Kalis has been to many. Kudos to John, by the way. He has been a stalwart bird dog on NOACA and all their nefarious activities. But there's several things to know about this and unpack this kind of complicated issue. The first thing to know is that There is nothing that requires those counties outside of Cuyahoga to follow these edicts. We can, and I believe there is a clear path to exit NOACA, leave it, form our own, and use the money that we get more directly in better, more efficient, more economical ways that don't empower this green Marxist agenda. I say Marxist. I know I'm going to bounce around. Hopefully follow me on this. But the plan, this metropolitan planning thing, it comes from Bonn, Germany. There's a place in Germany that creates these maps and just rolls them out for Toronto, Canada, and Quebec, and Ireland, and wherever. All over the world, they're trying to use this sort of blueprint map to take over societies and dictate to them what they can and can't do. And the whole thing is to first fearmonger and get people to believe that if we don't follow the orders, then the environment is we're going to start getting the polar bears are going to die and all that stuff. Meanwhile, we keep pointing to the fact that we can prove this stuff is wrong. Getting on to the matter of money, because that's where a lot of people's thoughts land. And the issue of NOACA has no money. NOACA does not distribute. They do not collect. They do not hand out. All they are is a pass-through organization. So we get money that comes through from taxes. Most of the revenue comes from gas tax. The gas tax goes through the federal government, and some of it goes through the state. Things like the Ohio Department of Transportation hand a whole bunch of money to NOACA. And yes, in the instance of that ridiculous infrastructure bill, billions of dollars got handed by federal government, but all they do is just hand it off. And NOACA is handing money. Well, I think first they're handing a lot of it to themselves in the form of these egregious salaries and massive complex bureaucracy, but they're handing it out to initiatives that lean far left. Here's where the rubber meets the road, literally. This is where it impacts everyday life in those 5 counties in Northeast Ohio. They've just ridiculously expanded themselves through government bloat and bureaucratic creep over decades into trying to effectively take over air, water, roads, transportation, bridges, wind patterns, you name it. They want to take this stuff over. Now, I mentioned that there's an example. There are videos that you can find online. I've been posting on them. Actually, I think John Kalis and I may have been John that originally brought this to my attention. We've been talking about something called the Delphi method, and that's what was used effectively to turn the San Francisco Bay Area, and that actually encompasses, I think, like 7 counties, that whole Bay Area into a Marxist third world depraved region. What they do, and John has seen it, I've seen it, we're commenting all over social media. If you're in or near Northeast Ohio or care, watch these videos, watch our posts, or look up Delphi method on your own. What they're doing is going out into communities like mine, and I've gone to probably 10 or more meetings, and they come with an agenda, and there's no way out of it. So under the guise of collecting community opinion and building consensus and everything, they send these nice, flowery, smiley, happy people to come out and basically hand you a questionnaire, which is, do you like NOACA a lot, a whole lot, or are you in love with NOACA? And there's no spot on there to say, go away. I don't like you. I don't want NOACA. I don't believe in anything you're saying. And we literally have been dissecting and calling fraud on many of the elements of the data gathering that they're collecting. It is a sprawling money grab. And I'm
Jonathan, hang on one second. Hang on one second. Let me just cut into John for a minute. So, John, you were at that last meeting. What about those sheets when you want to give your opinions and stuff like that? Is Jonathan accurate?
He nails it. We've been to enough of these things. There's no way there's no room for dissent. What we dealt with in Medina County, at least in this last instance, we had the majority of the people in the room. I think there was, counting all the facilitators, there was about 28 people in the room. there were probably 23, 24 people that felt the same way that I did. And, when they receive these surveys, they look at them. Some of the people fill them out. Some of the people don't, because they don't feel that there is a way for their interests to be included by filling out the survey. The issue that comes with that is without the survey, you're not counted. So, this was a comment that I brought up at NOACA's board meeting this past Friday, the 13th, to the board. I wanted them to understand, again, they always tout being a board of bipartisan elected officials. That's at least half true. Some of the people are appointed, but the people that are in those seats, they were put in those seats by average citizens like myself. And I wanted them to understand that the votes that they're making, the most ground level processes that are being used to gather the information from their voters is fraudulent and is not taking into account people that want nothing to do with this. So I would say that Jonathan is 100% accurate. It's really difficult. You show up, you feel like you're doing something, you're wasting your time. There's no way to express yourself. So the online surveys are even worse. But yeah, I mean, it's an important.
We don't really know if anybody sees those. I don't think those surveys. I don't. You fill them out and you hand it back to them, and they can just wrinkle them up and toss them in the wastebasket if they don't like it or something like that. I would think.
And they're supposed to keep them. They're supposed to keep records.
Yeah, they're supposed to. I got you.
Well, that's up to us.
Yeah. Hey, I got a quick question here. You did on your Substack page talk about the Cleveland Browns' new stadium, and that being regionalism. Did you want to talk about that a little bit, or?
Sure. Yeah. I don't know how much time we got. Looks like 7 minutes. When I talk about the lockdowns, I really, really, really want to treat that as the epicenter of the majority of this stuff. As we go through our day to day, we pay more in property taxes. We pay more, in inflation at the grocery stores. The people that aren't able to afford their goods and services, right? We subsidize those, and we end up paying for that. But again, all of those services are inflated as well. So when does the bleeding stop? It doesn't. A lot of us, again, just got our property tax bill here recently, and it looks like they captured it maybe at the peak again. But as we're being bled out, there's going to be some solutions that are lurking. As always, you never let a good crisis go to waste. So I saw some reporting going back a few years. I used to read Cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer just to keep an eye on what they had to say. 2019, they had a series of articles, which you can kind of see some of this talk on my Substack. Substack is commonsenseadvocate.substack.com. You can check out a few of my little writings there. But I reference the Cleveland Plain Dealer did a series back in 2019 about regionalism. And that's what I believe this all boils down to. You can go in there and see they use 3 cities. They use St. Louis. They use Minneapolis. They use, what was the other one? Indianapolis. To exhibit what regionalism would look like both in housing, in governance, in taxation, in land use, everything that NOACA is here to do. I knew that it was a push for the region. And then I figured out that NOACA is going to be the mechanism in which they're able to do it with the climate action funding, to push them over the finish line, I think. But along the way, what we are going to see is our leaders tell us that we need to start saving some cash. And the way to do that is to start consolidating services. What might start as fire departments, police departments, maybe some clerical stuff, service departments, in my eyes, could very easily equate to losing local control of governments. If you've got 3 townships surrounding each other, why would we pay for all of these offices, all of these administrators, and everything that comes along with it, the zoning departments? I mean, there's quite a bit. So that's going to be a solution to save us some money as we bleed out the cash. Now, again, going back to the Cleveland Plain Dealer and the Cleveland.com, you could read again on my Substack how over the course of years, They've had reporters discussing the funding of Cleveland Browns Stadium. A lot of that stuff, the angle they would approach it from is that the majority of people that go to the Browns games don't live in Cuyahoga County. So why are they funding these teams with the sin tax? That was their initial approach, and they beat that over the head for a few years. And they talked about
let me ask you a question. That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, everybody, who cares where people live? They're all coming to Cleveland to watch the ball game. They're spending their money in Cleveland at the hotel, restaurants, whatever. Their money is being spent in Cleveland. Who the hell cares where they're coming from? I don't even get the article that they're trying to, the logic they're trying to make on that.
My understanding of economics is that tourism dollars are the best dollars because you don't have to support, right? You don't have to support those people with services. They come in.
So if you're bringing people from Lake County to the ball games, it seems to me that Cleveland should be flipping the bill for the stadium and not Lake County, because the Lake County people are spending their money in Cleveland. At least that's how I generate it up. Jonathan, I kind of cut you off before, but if you want to wrap up anything, go ahead. I didn't want to.
Yeah, no, I definitely do. So John makes several good points, and I really do think that this whole notion of rebuilding Brown Stadium is the absolute Trojan horse. It's another thing that the left has designed to tug at the heartstrings. They use children, they use elderly, they use sports, they use the endangered animal, whatever it is, some sort of issue or thing that you might care about or can be convinced to care about. And then underneath that is the objective. The objective is regionalism, and this is on the coattails, or I guess the Jersey tails of Browns players. And I don't buy it. I'm not buying into it. We're not going to change the way that we conduct ourselves as a region to start thinking of taxation and things like it in some sort of 5-county wide arena. The differences between Geauga County, for instance, which is mostly agrarian and agricultural and farmland and horses, and we've got a lot of Amish out here, and downtown Cleveland couldn't be more extreme, but they want to create this regional thing. But so here's an example that had just occurred to me as we were talking. It was earlier today, or maybe late yesterday. I caught a video from Ann Vandersteel on Truth. So I think it was on X. She's gone back into one of the main areas that FEMA was supposed to be going in and setting up camps and rebuilding in North Carolina after the storms. Well, they collected, $700 million or something. They built a couple of things. The staff never showed up, and then they just left. There's just a vacant lot now where this money went. It disappeared into the lot in the staff that never showed up. And apparently, according to Ann Vandersteel's comments and her news coverage, nothing ever happened. It was $700 million. It's pure, in her words, it's money laundering. And at an absolute consistent level, what I see from organizations like NOACA is effectively virtually no different. In my book, what we're seeing is this constant narrative of this thing is broken, or we need to rebuild this thing and the roads are in bad condition or whatever. Well, here's a news flash for you. Drive around virtually anywhere in the Cleveland area, and you're probably going to need some dental work done after you hit some of those potholes. It's ridiculous. We've had like 50 years, and apparently, according to the lore of places like NOACA, apparently it costs $70 billion per pothole because they haven't collected enough yet to fix some of the potholes. It's a money grab. It's purely money grab, and I'm not buying into the regional thing. It's just not going to work. There's another more local example, and that is busing. So because NOACA and because of the mandated metropolitan planning organization of this region, places like Lake County and Geauga County, and I think Medina and Lorain, I think we're all mandated to have bus routes because we have state routes, and I don't know, for whatever reason, we have to have these bus routes. Well, just like Cleveland, only worse, there are these buses that just tootle around chewing up gas with virtually nobody ever riding on them. They're these giant empty buses that are mandated to drive these routes, and it's like goodwill charity to a bunch of bus drivers. Well, we figured out a long time ago that we could do on-demand vans all over the place, and all these people did huge studies on it, and it saves like 97% of the budget or something ridiculous. It's like it drops it from like $6 billion a year to $500 a year. It's just outrageous. I'm exaggerating the outrageous savings that it would have represented. But and I don't know that it was NOACA in that particular instance, but some organization from on high like them was like, well, no, you can't do it. It's just not permitted. And it's just so ridiculous. We have all these bloated programs, and then John's right. What ends up happening is more and more and more and more of these programs are mandated that all just chew up money for nothing effective. We argue against not only the effectiveness, but the logic and reasoning that goes into the calculations that present the darn things in the first place. Like this whole idea that somehow Northeast Ohio is some sort of massive global footprint in carbon emissions. But look at the rest of the world. I mean, you look at India and China and Brazil. We're supposed to ignore the places in the world that are growing coal plants and in producing more. And actually, they're more than offsetting. If we just suddenly had nobody living here and we were just wilderness again, it really would have no impact because it's being more than absorbed by the increasing energy production of other places of the world. So the whole thing is nonsensical and it has price tags on it that would make Elon Musk's eyes pop.
Hopefully.
The price of these things is to human life, to liberty, to freedoms, to our autonomy, to individualism, even agriculture. Heck, they want to take over and control how we plant and where we plant. And by the way, another time I'm going to mention, if you haven't picked up the book Tombstone by Yang Zhixing, that's actually banned in communist China, read that. Because as you read about the documented steps that it took to install communism in China, you're going to have some jaw-dropping experiences. You're going to see the very footprints of exactly what we're describing. It's there. It's in print. You can't refute me. It's been documented by one of the lead journalists from the Communist Party within China was talking about all these changes that were made by the Communist Party to food, agriculture, transportation, planning, city planning, living organizations, all of it. And it all smacks of NOACA.
Yeah, communism and stuff like that. Let me get John back in here. John, under the new Trump administration, it's going to be taking effect here real soon. Any chance that they're going to just put the kibosh on all this nonsense with NOACA? In your opinion, if it was defunded through Doge, Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk and that, they said, this is not necessary, then the funding dries up. Maybe this whole NOACA crap could be gone away for at least 4 or 5 years. I don't know. Any thoughts?
I'm going to answer that question, but if I could just talk to just a tagline that I want to attach to what Jonathan said.
Sure. Go ahead.
And I really think that it's important that we start saying this more. NOACA is an organization or an agency ripe with solutions in need of problems. That if you look at everything through that lens, that explains it all. So again, an agency with solutions in need of problems. So back to your question about the federal government, the Trump administration, and Doge and all that stuff. I don't know. I'm not certain. They're not in office yet. Everybody's doing a lot of talking, whether it's social media or through their other channels. We do have a line to J.D. Vance here. I think J.D. Vance understands Ohio. I think that there's plenty of people over the last 2 years of him being in office where there's been some relationships forged. What I would say is, you can't ignore a groundswell. So the more people that we can kind of get moving on the ground And the more noise that we can make with our state legislature, the better off we're going to be, because essentially this is a ground level issue. When we look at it hitting our backyards, when we look at some of NOACA's statements, I mean, they're into planning on the level when I talked about planners earlier, coming in and helping cities, townships, villages with their local comprehensive plans. So, you know, when Jonathan talked about the Delphi technique, like that's what they're using when they come in to help you in your small township of 7,000, 8,000 people. When you're deciding what you want it to look like, they have planners that are already read in on what NOACA's goals are and how to tailor your local plans towards the grand scheme. Okay. So again, we can hope that something happens, and we can even exercise whatever relationships we have to get conversations with those folks. But we have state representatives that are pretty active here in Ohio. It looks like we're going to have a relatively favorable state house. You know, there's going to be some things. They already talked about getting rid of local zoning, affordable housing crisis. Again, take that. It's back to the lockdowns. But these are issues, you know, let's say that we can make this go away. We don't want to check out as soon as this is done. We want to create the networks and forge the relationships for the next issue. Maybe we can be offensive instead of defensive next time. You know, there's a thought, right? But the one thing that cannot fail is becoming more organized and communicating better on the ground. And that's where I would say start. Any relationships anybody else has to tap into, that's great. Forge complaints. Do public records requests, right? I mean, like you said about the surveys and stuff, like they have to keep it, they have to provide it. If we can show that they're not doing what they're supposed to do as they're not representing us, I mean, that's always good. Any evidence that we can gather against them and try to get to our representatives before NOACA does. At NOACA's governance committee meeting last Friday, they had a list of all the state reps and state senators that they were going to meet with in the next few months or whatever. Well, if they're meeting with them, they don't represent NOACA, they represent us. And if NOACA doesn't represent us or isn't working in our interest, then maybe we need to make these cases to our state reps before NOACA gets to them. So that's definitely something I would recommend. They mentioned getting a hold of Bernie Moreno. They're going to talk to him and whoever DeWine decides to appoint to Vance's Senate seat. So they're sizing up our politicians.
And that's something we got to do. You're right. We got to beat them to the punch. We got to get to the state reps and let them know what's happening, that we don't approve of this stuff. Because if they only hear it from one ear, from those lobbyists from NOACA, that isn't what we want. Hey, Leonard, any thoughts or anything you want to contribute on?
Well, I have to say, well, first of all, thanks for coming on board. I really appreciate all the information. I've never been a big fan of NOACA because it's just to be another pseudo level of government that's promoting communism. But what's really interesting, you made a very important comment that I think we tend to take for granted, and that is all politics is local, local, local. And one of the things that the biggest hurdle that we have is just educating people on just the basics of what is representative government. And I think what happens is we tend to vote, we think everything's going to get fixed, and then we sit back and wait for it to happen. Even on the Trump agenda, I mean, I'm hearing he's backpedaling on a lot of things now because I'm pretty sure someone told him there's certain things he can't touch. So he's trying to change his tune a little bit. So, but I never put my faith in the federal level anyway, because I never did trust the government with some of the things they're doing behind the scenes. But I agree with you. We have to stay local. We have to educate people locally. And that's the way you're going to make the difference. It's going to be with us doing it. And Jonathan said, we the people, we the people. And if we don't recognize that, in my mind, culture always precedes politics. So as Brian stated, if the culture tends to die, then the politics will control everything. So just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a good job.
Good job. Brian, any thoughts, man?
Yeah.
Last thoughts or something?
Yeah, when we were talking about talking to the representatives, I'm thinking to myself, well, what about the at the local level in Lake County and talking to the commissioners? As well as I know the commissioners, you've got Commissioner Hamercheck. He is a big proponent of NOACA. Commissioner Plechnik, not so much, but he's not going to gather everybody together to try to make a change in the whole NOACA. He was on this podcast a couple of weeks ago talking about NOACA, and he says in order to get out of it, we've got to have the NOACA board allow vote Lake County out, and also the governor has to approve for Lake County to get out of the existing NOACA and form our own MPO. And maybe Jonathan and our guests can address that, but Leonard and I have had a terrible time trying to reach the representatives, and it got us to make the statement this representative democracy that we say we have is really just an illusion. I mean, if they don't even want to meet with us, how are they going to know how we feel about a given issue? And they're really not representing us. They're representing the donor class, as I've said many times. So this is I'm not a big proponent. I think we probably could, take this gasoline tax and go directly to the counties through the state, as opposed to another level of government. That's my opinion.
No, I agree.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
So, thanks for coming back to me. Brian just made, in my book, probably the most fundamental talking point, the discussion point of this, of my experience on this show. I can't possibly overemphasize this. There's a reason that for over a year now, twice a week, every Tuesday afternoon at 2 and Friday evenings at 9 p.m., Dan Schultz, who was out of Maricopa County, Arizona, the man behind Precinct Strategy, he and I have been training the country twice a week for over a year on Precinct Strategy, which is at its core training people up on citizen engagement and involvement at the local level in politics. That's what it is. The civics disappeared from our schools in the late 1960s for a reason. It's because now we have entire generations of people that are clueless about what representative government is supposed to be. So if we're going to fix this stuff, and we can, it is not by voting for somebody and then hoping that Columbus or DC fixes something. When we fix it, it's not a matter of if, it's when we can reclaim the representative voice and will of we the people. Precinct Strategy does that. If you're on the social media platform X, come and find me there. It's JR Broadbent. First initial, middle initial. You can see my last name spelled at the bottom of the screen. JR Broadbent, that's my profile. I also run a few other profiles. When you engage in the conversation, we're going to talk about what the local seat is and what that representative means to you, your community, and to the state and the country. That's the key piece. That's where the true power of the Republican Party and our political system resides. People don't know that, and we've been misled for a reason. The precinct, that local level, and I'm just going to tease this out, all across the country, every single resident of the United States is supposed to have a local representative who is the eyes and ears of the political body. They are supposed to be the conduit to political engagement. Over roughly half of the country has no representative just because nobody bothered to run. So at its best, our Republican Party is maybe at half strength right now, maybe. And of the mix, many of the people that are in there are not truly Republicans. We're fixing that. We've been working on it. Dan actually has been working on it for 15 years. He's formed precinctstrategy.com. In Ohio, we have ohioprecinctstrategy.org. Check it out. That's how we fix the issues. The issues won't fix themselves, and our politicians won't fix them because that means less money in their pockets. we, the people, we can fix it, and we will with precinct strategy. Join me, join the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's the whole key. We've been preaching that a lot. The whole key is activism. John, thanks a lot. Merry Christmas to you. If you have any parting words for us, we appreciate it. And anything you want to leave us with the NOACA stuff. Appreciate you coming on. We'll have to have you on again anytime you have the time. Come on, come on. But
well, thanks for having me on. Were you talking to me or talking to Jonathan?
No, I'm talking to you, and maybe you can just, how important is activism in all this? How important is the activism, stepping forward, not watching someone else do something, but for us, the individual, to take the action?
I talked to Bob France a few times. One of the things that I talked to Bob France about was not trusting anything in this day and age. I mean, anything can be fabricated. Each day we have another series of Democrats that are apparently very publicly seeing the light and doing a 180 and coming over to our side. And people can't wait to celebrate that and pretty much hand them the keys to the car and let them lead a charge. And that doesn't make much sense to me. AI exists now. A lot of people spend their time making AI memes. Every time there's a new story or scandal or issue that comes out, everybody goes right to their AI meme generator. I guess I get the importance of satire when we're dealing with this stuff, but I think a lot of it's a waste of time. I think activism is important. I think doing the boring work is important. Because, to be honest with you, if you look at this, I kind of look at this as Revenge of the Nerds. They put a lot of people in power.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Well, I think he froze up again, but that's okay. I think we're just about done here tonight. Do want to thank everybody and wish everybody a happy Merry Christmas coming up. I know we got another show before Christmas, but you can never say Merry Christmas enough. That's how I say it.
How about now?
Yeah, I can hear you, but go ahead and finish up, John.
Okay. Where did I leave off with? Did I hit the
Where
Revenge
did you leave
of the...
off at?
Yeah, Revenge of the Nerds, I think.
I was on Revenge of the Nerds, right? So look, you look at a lot of these folks that are in charge now. These are people that never used to go out and get involved, and the internet has made people a lot more powerful. They've allowed other people to network who would have never had the ability to do that. And some of these people are aggrieved. Some of these people are angry. They feel rejected by society. When you see the pictures of them, when they eventually surface of who the people are behind a lot of these handles, it makes sense. So, if they can read, which a lot of folks like to do that are kind of, isolated, and you have a method to then go and exact revenge, it's possible. So why would you want to give that away? Why would you want to let someone who might not agree with you or share your ideology come in and do your local comprehensive plan? Why would you trust them to that? You shouldn't. You should surround yourself with people that feel the same as you and value the same things as you. That's more important than anything. And back to what I was saying a little earlier, the only thing, right, what do they say, is believe nothing of what you hear and half of what you see. And that's never been more pertinent than now with the ability to just fabricate things. We watched it happen during COVID.
Especially when you're talking to a politician. Don't believe anything they say.
Just go back to COVID. Go back to the war in Ukraine. I want to say maybe even the gas attacks that they were saying were happening over in Syria. They just recycle a lot of photos. We don't know where any of this, there's catalog stuff. We don't know where any of this stuff's coming from. And luckily, I guess there's people that pay close enough attention and have the tools to go kind of prove that they're being recycled. But I guess that's my point is if we start small and we only trust the things that we can physically touch, we can start to grow from there and create networks and create levels of trust. And that's what it's going to take. So that's why local, in my eyes, is the most important thing. It's the only thing that's real.
Local and the human touch, and you got to get out there and talk to the state reps and buddy up with them. We just can't talk at them. We got to talk to them. That's what NOACA is doing. That's what we got to do. Well, thanks again for being a part of the show. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Guys, everybody out there.
Thanks, Joe.
Good night, okay? Have a good night. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, everyone.